All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Authors Unite show. Today I have Ollie Rankin with us. He is a visual effects and virtual reality pioneer who splits his time between the cutting edge of immersive tech and advocating for diversity, fairness, and sustainability. So, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks, Tyler. Great to be here.
Grateful to have you on. So where do we, I always like to start here because you like AI, virtual reality, all that stuff. It's a little over my head. So I'm going to learn with the audience while we're interviewing you. Um, did you think when you were younger, you'd be doing anything like this? Like, was this always something you were interested in?
Yeah, very much so. I grew up reading a bunch of crazy science fiction, cyberpunk novels, and yeah, for a very young age, I was ready for virtual reality and AI to be something. I didn't really know what it was going to be besides, this kind of cool cyberspace thing where you could, put
Yeah.
on a headset and go into a virtual world. But yeah, obviously the industry didn't exist in an appreciable sense when I was growing up, when I was at college, but it was definitely something I've had my sights set on since I was a kid.
Got it. And then what path? Because obviously people learn this stuff, but it's so out of my realm. So like, what did you do to learn? Because you can actually build these things, right? Like AI, like virtual, like
Yeah.
you actually built the tech behind it.
Yeah, so I started out, back in the, I grew up in the 80s, and I started probably in the late 80s teaching myself how to program on a hand-me-down computer. It was one of those
Yeah.
Atari 800 XL. So it was a system that you'd plug into your TV. It had you know, might have had the games saved on a tape recorder sort of thing. So yeah, that was my first step, was sort of teaching myself to program. And at that point I was, sort of very interested in games and figuring out how to program simple games. And then that just sort of led to, by the time I got to college, studying computer science.
Mm.
Um, AI was, it was a very new sort of discipline in academia at the time, but I sort of picked it up. My college had a pretty good computer science faculty for AI, so I sort of studied that. But it wasn't really until I was graduating and not really sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. But at that moment, Peter Jackson announced he was making Lord of the Rings,
Mm.
and I had this just sudden sort of eureka moment of, oh, okay, I think I know what I want to do here. And not having any idea that AI was relevant to the filmmaking process. I didn't even mention that I'd studied AI when I was applying to work on Lord of the Rings. And it was just this sort of a crazy series of social coincidences that led to me getting a job using a form of AI to build brains for orcs and elves and choreographing the battle sequences in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh man, I love those movies too. Because I was doing some research and Matrix. You've done the Matrix, right?
That's right. Just the last one, but yeah, that was
Awesome. Yeah, I love those movies. They're awesome. X-Men, Transformers, even Alice in Wonderland. What was that one like? That's cool.
yeah, yeah. I think it's funny when you look back over the movies that I've worked on. There's often this theme of, sort of alternate worlds and sort of uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
virtual universes, and yeah.
Was
Um,
there a favorite or just all kind of equally cool projects?
I mean, you can't go wrong with the Lord of the Rings and Matrix trilogies. I used to joke that my career has gone downhill steadily ever since that sort of starting point.
Oh yeah,
But
you still
there.
that's tough to compete with.
But then sometimes the sort of the dumbest movies that you work on end up being the most fun. Like I worked on a movie, Fred Claus,
Mhm.
which I don't recommend anybody watches if they haven't already seen it. But it was actually an enormous amount of fun to work on because we were motion capturing a small troop of, small in multiple meanings, a small troop of Russian circus midgets.
Mm.
Um, to act as Santa's little helpers in the North Pole, and
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe I'll check it. It's funny. Sometimes like I never go by like Rotten Tomatoes or like the reviews on like Amazon Prime or anything because I've seen movies that are like 2 out of 5 stars and I really like it. So it depends on your taste, I guess. And like
totally.
your level of goofiness that you're willing to, I guess, allow the movie to be. Because there's some really like some movies are like bad acting, but they're so bad acting that they're funny, and
Hmm.
I'll sometimes like those ones like a lot. So it depends. Um, cool.
Totally.
I got.
It's also surprising how much your appreciation of a movie is affected by your expectations going into it. So if all your friends tell you, "Oh my God, this is an amazing movie," and then you go to it and you're like, well, "It's not as good as I thought," but if
Yeah,
all your friends tell you this is a pile of shit, and you go to it and you're like, "Actually, that's not as bad as everyone said."
you're right. I think expectations do have a lot to do with that, and maybe that's actually why. Because whether it's actually true or not that a second or third movie, how they say usually like the first one's the best.
Hmm.
That might be kind of subconsciously because our expectations are so much higher for the second and third.
Totally.
That could be it. I never thought about that. Interesting. Maybe that's it. um, so I wanted to ask you, like, where do you? I'm kind of associating what you do a little bit with Elon Musk type of stuff. So I might be off on this, but like with like the brain chip and stuff that I don't know,
Right.
like where is this AI stuff going? Like, is it going to be like, can you visualize the next like 5, 10 years? Is it going to be very extreme then, or is it more like 20, 30 years out?
I think the sort of that neural interface stuff is still probably in the 20 plus years out, because I mean, it's amazing what they're talking about doing with Elon Musk's company. But it's just hard to imagine that we've figured out the brain enough to be able to, make it a realistic sort of a workable computer interface by plugging wires into your brain.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
that's definitely the future. I look at the trajectory of technology over my lifetime, and grew up with no computers being in the household, and then people had computers at home. Then the internet came along, and that sort of gave you access to all of human knowledge at your fingertips on your computer at home. Then our smartphones came along, and we have all that human knowledge accessible in our pockets now. It seems like a sort of logical trajectory that in the next however long, we won't need to pull out a device to have access to all human knowledge, but we'll be able to tap into it, either through smart glasses, or, our personal digital assistants, or kind of the combination of smart glasses, smart watches, smart earpods. All of these things are, getting kind of closer and closer to being inside of our brains. Um,
Yeah, I find that pretty exciting. Like I was pumped for Google Glass, I think it was called.
mhm.
Maybe you know why it didn't, or it just didn't take hold, I guess. Because I don't even know if they sell them anymore. But
So actually, yeah, that's actually a really interesting topic, because yeah, that obviously was an example of something that a lot of people were sort of ready for, um, technologically, but then it really bombed. There was that sort of the backlash against the glass holes, as they were called, the people that were walking around with those headsets on. But actually, in secret right now, and it's not even secret, it's just not being publicized. There's a bunch of companies that are using the next generation of Google Glass in sort of enterprise work situations. So people on factory floors who have them on, and they're getting readouts of the machines that they're working with in real time, which is a great example of a use case where it saves a lot of time and energy to be able to have that information in your field of view. It's obviously something that the Microsoft HoloLens and Magic Leap has also sort of pivoted towards that enterprise use
mm,
case for augmented reality. So yeah, I think there's a lot of progress going on in that sphere, and the ability for somebody with no training at all to be able to put on some kind of headset and be able to do a job or have the training in real time as they're kind of on the job, it's obvious that that's going to be able to save a lot of money and time and mistakes and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, no, I was because so with movies, I'm sure you're kind of on the cutting edge of everything. So I can't think of a movie offhand, but in movies where instead of a computer, it'll be like a hologram or something comes up and they can
sure.
talk and drag it. Does that already exist?
It does, yeah.
That
So that sort of Minority Report.
I want
Um,
that.
Yeah, so for instance, just about a week or 10 days ago, a new app came out on the Oculus Quest. I think it's called Immersed, and it allows you to put on the VR headset and connect to your computer. And so even if you've only got one monitor on your computer, with your VR headset, you can have multiple monitors and you can interact with those monitors and with your computer through those monitors. And then the crazy thing is that you can teleport into somebody else's computer. So I'm working on this VR project with a friend at the moment, and he's doing, he lives sort of 10 miles from me, and he's doing some work building the 3D sort of worlds that it's going to take place in. And I'm able to put on my VR headset and we do like a Zoom call, but we're both in this sort of virtual non-existent world looking at virtual representations of screens that he doesn't even have on his computer in the real world.
Yeah, that's crazy. I bet it makes work more fun though. That's the thing I've thought of, like just all the little, I mean, computers are great, so I'm not saying anything bad about them, but there's definitely things I notice that I do more than once. Whereas if I could just like, speak to a hologram or be in that virtual reality, it would save me a lot of time. And I would imagine you would kind of lose track of time because you'd be just very present in that other world. It would just make things more fun and more productive. So it's like, why would we not move toward that?
Absolutely. And you brought up AI before and again just now, and I think that's a really good point that we're not really thinking about enough. And I know that the big tech companies like the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks, Microsofts, Amazon, what they're doing that is sort of behind the scenes, and obviously Amazon have been doing it from the very beginning, is sort of learning what we like, right? Learning what we do, what we like. They're collecting data from absolutely every single thing we do when we're on their websites, when we're in their apps. We are training their AIs to learn more about us. So the point that you made just then about, things being able to be more efficient as the AI learns, so if the AI knows that on Mondays in the morning I get up and I go for a run, that your devices can all be primed for that. And so you don't need to choose a playlist because it can automatically, kick in the playlist that you want to listen to while you're working out. Or, that's just a really simple example, but we're getting to the point as we bring these computers closer and closer into our sphere of experience, we're going to get to the point where rather than having to tell the computer what to do, or having a more streamlined interface to tell the computer what we want it to do, it's going to start guessing. It's going to be more like an AI collaborator than it is going to be a tool.
Is there something out there right now that like, because I forget where it was. I read something that like businesses that do not integrate AI within, maybe the time frames are difficult to predict, but let's say 10 years, just the mere fact that in your niche, there will be other companies that do have AI, like you will just inevitably go out of business because you won't be able to keep up, you know?
Yeah,
Because even little things like that, if you add it up over time, that maybe saves you months. Just, and it's just a real quick, go to Spotify, click the playlist. That's like 10, 20 seconds, but every day, 3, 4 times a day, if you have AI that just knows like, hey, 10 a.m., this guy's running with this song, it adds up actually.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And the similar sort of parallel, I guess, is, back in the 90s when the internet was sort of first starting out, there was this notion of internet companies and traditional companies. And there were a lot of companies that were like, well, no, we have our brick and mortar business. We're not an internet company, so we don't need a website. But then, by the 2000s, if you didn't have a website, you didn't exist as a company anymore.
Yeah.
In the realm of where people were actually looking to find you. And the same sort of thing, obviously in a different way, but AI very much is going to, it allows computers to do things for us in a much more efficient and customized and optimized way.
Got it. And so is there an actual, like, is there anything out there right now, like for a small business owner that, I guess, what would you do? Would you like download an app and then it learns about you and then it starts, or is it only really, you got to be like, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
mean, there there aren't these sort of general artificial intelligences yet, and I think we're another generation away before we have these sort of before the digital assistants become so sophisticated that they can learn sort of our general behaviors and become useful collaborators in that sense.
Mhm.
But I think at the moment it's a lot of sort of specific use cases. So if you need something to help you scheduling your time, or you need, you can now have an AI personal assistant that will do all of your
Yeah.
meeting scheduling for you, and will even make phone calls for you and order things for you. So there are quite sort of specific use cases that have been already rolled up into AI, but yeah.
Got it. Okay. So I want to ask this question, and this is about as deep as you can go, really, and then we'll dial back because I want to learn more about your company and what you're up to. So Elon said there's a higher chance that we are in a virtual reality right now than not. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there is a pretty high chance that we are in a simulation.
That's
um,
good. Yeah.
because it's inevitable as we watch ourselves kind of learning more and more about AI, and creating simulations that are becoming more and more sophisticated. The chances are that with the universe being, well, who knows how old the universe is? Maybe our simulated universe is as old as we think the universe is.
Yeah.
Um, it's I don't know that we'll ever be able to figure it out, though. I don't think we'll ever be able to prove definitively that we are in a simulation or we aren't.
Okay. Because yeah, I guess what it just is like you just keep going into deeper layers. So then,
Mhm.
and I guess maybe well, I don't know if it would work that way. The deeper layer you can get to, maybe as a reflection, we could maybe discover the beginning in a sense, but like maybe we're just going the wrong direction to discover that. I don't know. Depends how you look at it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that the further we get into quantum physics, the more complexity we keep on finding. You
Yeah.
kind of hope as you drill down into things that you'll eventually find the most simplistic, most basic kind of building block of everything. But every layer that we peel off, it seems to open up more dimensions and more.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah. So when we find I don't know what it would look like, but maybe it's just a black hole. It's like, oh, okay. We were shot from there. Um, so your main company is Pansensory Interactive, right?
that's right. Yeah.
And
But at the moment, I'm splitting my time between Pansensory,
okay,
a group VR Jam that I'm with, and an organization that VR Jam has recently created in collaboration with some partners at the Shangri-La Glastonbury team.
okay,
Um, so we organized this big virtual music festival a couple of weeks ago called Lost Horizon, and that was actually the world's first multi-day, multi-stage, entirely virtual music and arts festival.
that's great.
Uh,
Tell me more about that. What was that like?
yeah, so that was really kind of the culmination, I guess, of a lifetime of fantasy about the sort of virtual reality world, where we actually managed to pull off this incredible cyber festival, we managed to pull together a bunch of, you know, huge name DJs like Carl Cox, Fatboy Slim, Pete Tong, all of these kind of, you know, luminaries in the electronic music scene. And we built replicas of the stages from the Glastonbury Music Festival in the UK. And so we had 4 different stages. We had 75 DJs and bands and art from dozens of international artists. And we used the platform Sansar. So Sansar it's kind of an offshoot of Second Life. I'm sure you've come across that.
I think I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of these sort of, you know, massively multiplayer online sort
Yeah.
of role-playing social spaces. And Sansar is an offshoot of that. It is sort of specifically designed for live events. And so you can connect to it using a VR headset or your PC. There's also a smartphone app. And then crazy thing is that inside this virtual music festival, we also had virtual camera operators, so that we were live streaming from multiple different camera positions and from moving, like roaming camera operators within the virtual world. So we were streaming out via Beatport to Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. So we just, you know, it was like a real music festival with everything that you would have, all of the live acts, all of the kind of random conversations, all of the you know, the sort of craziness, everybody in wacky outfits. And
That's awesome. So what was it like? Like, what was the feedback from the people, like, or and the business side of it too? So did people like pay for tickets, I suppose, and then they got in?
so
Or?
because this was a first, and because all of us that are behind it are very sort of socially minded, we all want to make the world a better place. So, you know, we decided to do this first one for charity. So we were raising money for Amnesty International and for the Big Issue, which is an organization in the UK and a couple of other countries that makes a newspaper by and for the homeless. So we were raising money for those 2 organizations, and yeah, people would need to download one of the Sansar apps, whether on their PC, VR, or a smartphone, or you can just tune in to any of the streams. And I think we had something like 4.5 million stream views over the course of the weekend.
That's amazing. That's a good first festival. That ain't bad.
And I think we had about 10,000 people attending between the VR, PC, and smartphone app.
Okay.
And the awesome thing was, because I was working during the course of the festival, but I also got to take some time out and attend it. And, you know, I'd always known how transportive it would be to have a VR headset on and go to this festival. And it really was like you were there. And one of the things about the Sansar platform is that it's quite a realistic kind of rendering style. So it sort of feels like you're in this real place, sort of gritty and dirty and like muddy on the ground, just like a music festival would be.
Yeah.
But then the person next to you is this giant tarantula with a paper mache Bernie Sanders mask on. And then there are these sort of cartoon turtles dancing with the DJ. So I absolutely knew that the virtual reality experience would be transportive, and you know, you'd feel like you were there. But the thing that really blew my mind was that even without the VR headset, when you're just using your keyboard and mouse, like you're playing a third-person video game, being there, and you know, you've got your avatar represented on the screen, and you download a bunch of dance moves, they call them emotes, and you hit the number keys so that you can kind of make your avatar do these sequence dance moves. And then I had friends from around the world there with their avatars, and even though their avatars didn't look anything like them, because they had made the creative decisions to choose what items of clothing they were wearing, you could kind of project your vision of that person's personality onto their avatar, and as they were dancing, and so we had, like, you know, five of us standing around in a circle tuned in from different places around the world. And it actually felt like we were there together on a dance floor.
That is incredible.
It was amazing.
When is the next one? I want to go.
So yeah, we're talking about doing the next one in October, but we're lining up to do sort of a series of quarterly tentpole events on the sort of similar scale to what we did in early July, and then we're also going to be doing sort of monthly events with a bunch of different musical styles and different brand
Nice.
activations as well.
All right. Well, yeah, keep us posted on that, because I don't think in-person concerts might not be back for a little while. So,
Absolutely.
and I'm curious whether if they were or weren't. This is actually, curious enough to me that I'd still want to do it, but it's kind of yeah, this by default actually is really your only option for a concert now. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, one of these things that you do when you're looking at the work that you're doing in your life, and you trying to decide how much of your energy to put into it. I've worked on all of these movies, and we sort of kill ourselves in the final weeks before a deadline, and we always have to remind ourselves, you know what, we're not saving anybody's lives here. We're not doing anything. We do need to sort of still maintain a work-life balance, but there's a very real sense now when you're creating these virtual events, maybe you are saving somebody's life, because maybe somebody's going to go to your virtual event instead of
Yeah,
going to a real life event and catching COVID.
100%. Yeah, and I think on a like mental kind of like illness, or just because it's definitely put a, I don't know how to word it. It's made people's life way different than what it was before. So
Yeah,
mentally, even if you're not literally physically there, if it feels like it, and you got five friends, on a dance floor, it probably helps you mentally, I would imagine.
definitely,
Uh,
definitely. I'm what I'm not going to be able to sort of compare is, because I had that first experience when I was starving for social interaction.
yeah,
Maybe the fact that I was starving for social interaction is why I was able to find it so compelling. Maybe, um, but that's the reality. That's where we are now, and yeah, I think. Yeah, we are being able to address that sort of that need to be around other human beings in a way that's entirely safe.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. When you think about all the angles, this is awesome work and very timely. Um, so you brought up the movie again. I remembered another question I wanted to ask you. So with movies, because I've always wondered this, if it's one of two ways, is it like you all go to this area, and I assume it's multiple areas, it's very strict deadlines, and it's just like straight to business? Or is it kind of like, like a movie, like even Lord of the Rings, right? Because that was in New Zealand, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a beautiful area there. So, or is it kind of like, hey, we got 6 months. This is all the cast and everything. Let's have a few parties, and like we'll film this day and that day. Or is it, like, which way is it more like, or maybe in the middle?
No, when you have a big budget movie, they're very, very sort of strict about how that money gets spent. So,
Okay.
when you're talking budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars, the studio wants to know that every penny of that is going to end up on the screen.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I when I worked on Lord of the Rings, I started on the same day that they started filming, because they filmed all three movies back to back, and the idea was that they would save some money by doing that. But that meant that we were filming, and we were doing sort of R&D for the visual effects, because a lot of the stuff that we'd done or that we did had never been done before. So we had to we were developing the software, we were developing the techniques for using that software sort of in real time. It's like we were laying out the track for the train as the train was getting
Yeah.
up to speed. And so we got about a year and a half almost of sort of R&D. You could call it R&D playtime. It was sort of trying to figure out how to do this stuff. Now, I don't know how well you remember the movies, but the first movie begins with this kind of prologue telling the story of how the ring got cut off
I
Sauron's.
remember that. It's been a while, but yeah.
So there was this whole sort of, yeah, this prologue sequence. It's, I don't know, like a 10 or 15-minute sequence of the movie of just like huge epic battle scenes.
Uh-huh.
And about a year out from the movie coming out, Peter Jackson had decided that our technology wasn't ready yet to include that in the first movie. They didn't want to, to sort of shoot the load early and have it look rubbish. So they rewrote the first two movies to put that whole sort of prologue sequence into the second movie to give us more time to get ready to do it. And then about 3 months out from the deadline, we kind of had this eureka moment where we showed Peter some test shots that we were working on that just looked amazing and blew everybody's mind. And he said, "That's it. That's what we need. This is we're going back to the original plan. So
Yeah.
we had to do that whole prologue sequence from scratch in 3 months. So we were working sort of 20 hours a day by the end of it to get it all done. But yeah, that's kind of an example of how these
So
sort of
they literally rewrote the whole thing and then went back. So that
yeah,
was like, well, not wasted money. It was part of the process. Part of the process.
exactly. But it's you kind of always have to hedge your bets, because you
Yeah,
can't afford to fail when you've got this much money on the line. So you always have to have these contingency plans in place.
that makes sense. And then, because I'm trying to visualize it, it's just been a while. But for like big battle scenes like that, is it more like digitized, or is it actual like thousands of people running at each other?
Yeah, so it's never more than, you know, max maybe a couple of hundred people in
Okay.
reality, and then whenever there's more than a couple of hundred people on screen, and sometimes we were up into, 250,000 orcs and elves
Yeah.
and mythical creatures, those shots would be fully CG. Um,
Okay. Got it.
so, if somebody's face is right in front of the camera, back in those days, you definitely, apart from Gollum, you couldn't really do a human face with that
Yeah.
fidelity. But yeah, so
It's,
it was always a mixture. You would cut back and forth between shots that were real people up close, and then sort of mid shots and wide and extra wide shots where it would be fully digital.
got it. I always wondered that. Okay. So I want to, near the end of this interview, I want to talk about From the Trees to the Stars. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, back while I was working on a motion capture shoot for I think it was the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. Um, I was binge watching sort of in between night shoots. I was binge watching a bunch of documentary series, and I just had this sort of revelation that um, yeah, and I would actually recommend either reading the book Guns, Germs, and Steel or watching the documentary series of it. Because that was something that gave me a lot of insight into how the sort of the progress of human civilization has been a lot to do with luck, right? When you think about it, that there are certain parts of the world where there are plants and animals that allowed people to domesticate and set up agriculture and that was what's needed to be able to not spend your whole day gathering food. And when you're not gathering food all day, then you can do things like science and art and philosophy and so in countries and in places like Papua New Guinea, for instance, where they don't have those domesticatable plants and animals, there are still people living these kind of primitive Stone Age hunter-gatherer lifestyles. Whereas in places where they did, like the cradle of civilization, they had these grains, they had these animals that they could eat and use to drag plows. They were able to sort of get civilization going on a faster pace. And, I got to thinking about how, we say, well, are there other alien civilizations out there? Maybe there is intelligent life has evolved on other planets, but they don't have the circumstances on those planets to be able to kickstart civilization because they're still hunter-gatherers a million years later.
Yeah.
Or maybe there are other planets where, where they've been able to accelerate that a great deal faster. So there's this idea called Fermi's paradox, which says in a universe as big as the one that we're in, that's been around for as long as it has, there are so many other planets that are probably habitable. Why haven't we encountered other alien species? And
Mhm.
the answer to that is this thing called the Great Filter, which says that somewhere in the sort of evolutionary and technological path between the development of intelligent life and interstellar travel, somewhere along that sort of the steps that you need to take to get to interstellar travel, there's a step that is so incredibly hard to overcome that nobody else has ever overcome it.
Mhm.
And we don't know whether we've already overcome it or whether we're still stuck on this side of that great filter, they call it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the place that we are as a species and as a civilization, as a culture, and I feel like we are actually at that great filter point right now. We are at the point of needing to overcome the same kind of selfish, individualistic tendencies that allowed us to become the dominant species on the planet. We are really good at exploiting resources and at exploiting each other. And these things have allowed us to tame the planet and to develop technology and to bring our civilization up to the level that it's at. But those same tendencies are now sort of stopping us from going to the next level.
Mhm.
Our infighting, our petty, individualistic, selfish instincts are stopping us all working together to figure out how to solve the coronavirus, how to solve the climate crisis, how to solve wealth inequality, and how to give every human being the same opportunity to contribute to and to participate in this amazing experience of life. So from the trees to the stars is my attempt to sort of help us get over that hurdle, to break through that great filter. And it comes from this little phrase that I came up with, which is that competition got us down from the trees, but only cooperation can take us to the stars.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think one great takeaway from this that I've noticed, because as I was doing research on you and now having spoken to you, is you seem to love what you do with the VR AI type of stuff, but then there's a social impact that's like behind it, and if
Hmm.
you can if you can and really the VR concerts kind of has both applied to them. So as an individual, if you can discover, what you love doing, and maybe it's work that's for money, and then another thing that's kind of behind it that is more for social impact and helping others. And sometimes they intertwine. Sometimes the money from this can fund this other thing. But either way, I think having both is probably it's better than only having one. It's probably a very good thing to have both of them. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so
Definitely recommend it.
yeah. So, well, yeah, thanks again for coming on. I guess, last question, I kind of want to leave the floor to you. If there's anything else that we didn't cover that you would like to share, you can share it. And then like social media, website, or anywhere people can kind of stay in touch with what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I realized that you asked about pansensory right earlier on in the interview, and I totally forgot to.
Yeah.
So let me give you a little bit of a rundown of what we're doing at Pansensory. So Pansensory Interactive was a company that I founded in 2012 to develop smartphone games. But then finally, not long after that, the VR revolution started. And so I pivoted the company into VR sort of technology, research, and content creation, because what I've always dreamed about since I was a kid was telling these virtual reality stories where you get to be a character in the story. So Downloaded is an example of that. It's an interactive, think of it like a less bleak Black Mirror starring you.
Cool.
So at the end of every episode of Black Mirror,
Yeah.
the end of every episode of Black Mirror, you come away thinking, shit, we're doomed. Humanity is inevitably on this trajectory towards some kind of, apocalyptic,
Yeah.
dystopia. But what I want to do is for people to come away from an episode of Downloaded thinking, if we do this, we're headed towards dystopia, but maybe if we did this, we could, steer more towards some sort of utopia. So Downloaded is it's a story series based on the idea that you can digitize human consciousness and download it to a computer. And the idea is that, obviously we're going to get to that point at some point. But imagine if instead of it being Facebook or Google that invented that technology, it was a bunch of hackers in their home labs. So
Yeah.
in Downloaded, you and another fellow hacker, the two of you have built this machine called an atomizerator, and you're testing it out with you as the guinea pig, and it works. So Lisa, your collaborator, she pushes the button, you're inside the machine, you kind of get digitized, and then now you find yourself trapped inside the computer. You're looking out through the screen of the computer. You can see her like news feed on the screen, and then you're looking out into at her in the real world while you're surrounded by this kind of digital virtual cyberspace. And then you have to figure out how to communicate with her, how to collaborate with her to reverse the polarity of the machine and print yourself back out into the real world.
That is wild. Okay, so that I want to do that too. But so a question I forgot to ask because I'm curious if you would do it. So along the same lines of what you're saying, it's a little different. But as we get older and our body decays and we all die. But if by that time there is an option, which it seems like there's going to be, that you can, maybe it's like a robot and you can put your consciousness or something like into the robot. Would you do that to live forever through that or no?
I don't think so.
It's a tough. Yeah.
Because I think that human progress needs renewal, and I think that old people sticking around forever is gonna prevent humanity from progressing to the next level. And as much as selfishly, I might want to stick around and see that.
I know that's my debacle with it is I'm like, I like it here. And nobody really knows exactly what happens after, but I can imagine maybe it's incredible or maybe it's like pretty nothing, I don't know. So, but I know that I like it here. So I'm like, I might do that. I don't know. But I know what you mean though, because eventually I guess, unless we really, the Mars thing and like all these other planets, like if there was just hundreds of millions of robots running around, I feel like at some point we will run out of room, at least on Earth. So we gotta I don't know
for sure.
And I guess at 1,000 years old you might be like, okay, I've been to Africa 30 times this year. I've been everywhere.
Yeah, I think actually the flip side though is that with virtual reality we'll be able to experience a lot more in a lot less time and with a lot less impact. So you could fit into the space of a normal human life the opportunity to visit every single country on the planet in VR, without having an environmental impact, without harming the wildlife there.
And it'll be like close enough to real. You're saying like it'll be like close. Yeah, I can't wait for that. That's one of my goals is to visit each place. So if I can do it while I'm lounging on the couch, that's cool. I'm down with that. I don't like flying either. It gives me anxiety. So, yes. What's the website?
So pansensory.com is where to find that. From the Trees to the Stars is mostly on Facebook as a Facebook community. And otherwise, people should look me up on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter, but not particularly active there. LinkedIn's probably the best place for people to reach me.
Okay, perfect, man. Thank you again. This was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise, Tyler. Thanks a lot.